Welcome to the podcast of MotorWeek, television's original automotive magazine. MotorWeek is made possible by TireRack.com and RockAuto.com. Here's your MotorWeek podcast host, John Davis.
Thank you, Alec Webb, and welcome everyone to our MotorWeek podcast number 260. I'm John Davis. Joining me today are two-wheeling reporter Brian Robinson.
Oh, great to hear you, John.
And online content coordinator Jessica Ray.
Hey, everybody.
And Jessica's also producing today. Greg Carlos, our normal producer, is out on maternity leave. So congratulations, Greg. Hope you and your growing family are doing well. Hey, everybody out there, if you are looking at the video version of our podcast today, I do apologize. I'm a big blank screen if I'm not even there, I guess. Video today just didn't cooperate with our internet. But anyway, you can hear us, and that's what's important. We got three great cars to talk about, a lightning round, a viewer question from Dion B. And at the end, we'll see if either Brian or Jessica has a rant or a rave or both. Everybody ready?
Mm-hmm.
All right, Jessica, you lead us off. The 2021 Mercedes-Benz S-Class. They don't get much bigger these days.
No, they do not. I mean, it was certainly an experience driving the new S-Class. It is everything that a flagship should be. And first, on the exterior, I know that a lot of people were not a big fan of this redesign because it wasn't. I mean, it's not exactly evolutionary, but on the outside, all the lines are a bit smoother, sort of goes in line with a lot of the rest of the design language we've seen from Mercedes-Benz. But I will say that it looks maybe just a slightly less regal than before, but it's more aerodynamic. And the big evolution, of course, is the interior. It's the inside. That's where there's so much new technology in this new S-Class, and Mercedes really focused on the inside experience. And one of the big things, of course, is there's these two large screens, one on the center stack and another one that is for the digital instrument cluster. So when you get in the car, it's very intimidating, I will say. I felt like I didn't have a lot of instruction before I was off and running. And I was in some confusing areas, so I did get a little bit lost, which would have been helped if I had had my augmented reality head-up display navigation cues that direct you arrows right on the road, exactly where you need to go. But I didn't have that. I didn't have that, unfortunately. I didn't have that on at least. And but once I sort of started to understand the design inside, everything made so much sense. You can control both the large screen on the center stack and the digital instrument cluster with your thumbs. When you're holding the steering wheel, you can control with a swipe of your thumb to change the radio, change any setting on it. It's really, really intuitive. So I thought that was really interesting. Another really awesome thing, of course, is that the MBUX, which is the Mercedes-Benz user experience, that has been upgraded. It's the new generation. It's 50 times faster than the previous generation, something like that. And anybody within all four seating positions can call to it. So you just say, "Hey, Mercedes," like you're talking to your phone, and it can respond to a ton of different questions, not just saying, "Hey, turn down the AC" or something, but it can respond to like indirect questions too. I tried to test it a little too much, but yeah, no, that was really interesting. And of course, one of the other really interesting features, it's a huge sedan, but it has optional rear axle steering, which was so weird to test out. It's really interesting to see if you watch somebody back up and all four wheels are turning, but it just surprises you on a turn that you think you're going to take and you have to go wide. It feels like it has a turning radius much closer to that of an E-Class. and you're in such a large vehicle. So that was really, really, really interesting to actually test out. Yeah, just overall the ride quality was incredible. I mean, it really was impressive. The Airmatic air suspension is just really, really awesome. And I can't.
So you were in Pothole City in a way, and so you felt it even held up well there.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. I think Brian here wrote our first look of it almost a year ago now, it seems. And he mentioned that something about saying, oh, we'd rather spend 10 hours in the driver's seat of the interior of an S-Class than on any like first class flight. And I spent 10 hours in that S-Class, which is an absurd amount of time for a first drive. But I have to agree with him because it's one of those cars that you get into and you will never dread a drive. You could be tired and it's so comfortable to drive. You feel nothing.
Yeah, the S-Class has always been like that. And I wish that was one vehicle everyone could experience. I mean, exotic cars are they're cool, they're fun. But this car, just with the technology and the luxury and just the things that no other vehicle has and people think about just in this car, it's just such a unique experience. Things like last gen, they brought out that air. I don't even remember what it's called, atomizer, I guess, where they pump scents through the HVAC. And I'm like, wow, S-Class owners, they don't even want to smell bad things in their life. So, but it's such an amazing car to drive as well. And people ask, like, what's the fastest you've ever been? They assume it's on a track and like a sports car, but it's actually in an S-Class, AMG S-Class in Germany on the unrestricted stretch of the Autobahn, just tacking that thing out. Amazing vehicle.
I think that's kind of the two of you really summed up what makes this car so special. It is absolutely one of at the pinnacle of the mass market luxury automobiles, and in many ways, I think I'd rather have this than some of the even pricier exotic four-doors out there. But on the other hand, as Brian noted, it still drives like a true German, maybe not sports sedan, but certainly more than your average luxury car. It's extraordinarily solid. It's extraordinarily fast. And at the same time, you're pretty much isolated from anything you don't want, like unwelcome sounds or pothole joust or anything like that. So pretty amazing car. And I can see, looking at the picture of a 21 versus a 20, I see where you're coming from, Jessica, saying it's a little less regal. It actually looks a lot more sporty than the previous generation did, I think. So.
Right. Yeah, no, I agree. It definitely looks sportier, but I think that goes in hand with the aerodynamics. They have the 48-volt mild hybrid system in it. So it's very, whether you get the V6 or the V8, it's very quiet. The cabin is so quiet. They've really tailored it, I think, a lot also to the experience within the rear seats as well, because now they have the optional rear passenger airbag, the executive trims, of course, the top of the line focuses a lot on, people who buy them to be driven around in them, but of course, even if you buy it to be driven around in, you will have plenty of fun also in the driver's seat. And I guess from what Mercedes tells us, that there's a lot of people that's why they buy them.
Yeah, well, clearly this car is chauffeur driven in many countries, especially in the Far East. And I noticed the back seat on the top model, you can get a substantial center console, just like the front, with a big screen. So you're really about the only thing you're missing back there is the steering wheel.
Yeah. Plus, there's even more stuff in the Maybach version of it as well, which we'll talk about, I'm sure, at a later date.
Yeah, it's interesting how, where Maybach used to be its own entity, that now it's just a trim level, but they've still maintained. It's incredible that they can actually add that much more to an S-Class to make the Maybach something unique.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's getting to, I have mixed feelings about the Maybach because I've driven it, not the S-Class, but the GLS, and I mean it's a step up from the top of the lines, the AMGs, but how much of a step up? I mean, it's sort of, yes, it is a bit more luxurious, but maybe not much so from the driver's seat.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Speaking of driving and what is important to people today, and that is being able to carry family or friends and all their gear, we're going to turn things over now to Brian, who's going to take the lead on the 2022 Porsche Cayenne Turbo GT. Just another trim level, or is there something more here to this particular Cayenne, Brian?
Way more than any Cayenne or any SUV before it. So Porsche currently has two SUVs line up, the compact Macan and the midsize Cayenne, which was, of course, their first SUV. Porsche being Porsche, just having that SUV is never enough. They've been ratcheting up the performance of the Cayenne ever since it came out in 2003, leading to this, the 2022 Turbo GT, the current SUV record holder on the Nürburgring. And yes, there is such a thing. So if you're familiar with the Cayenne, it's very 911 looking in the front, rounded SUV shape, going back from there. It's a regular version as well as a coupe version, as the European brands like to do. The Turbo GT does not have coupe in the name, but it is available exclusively in the coupe body style, which means there's more slope to the rear hatch, giving it a more hatchback vibe. In fact, the whole vehicle looks more like a giant jacked up hot hatch than really a traditional SUV. So add to that carbon fiber roof, big rear wing with side panels, lighter wheels, titanium exhaust to shave weight, and you have the basic look of the Turbo GT. So when you hear GT on like the 911 or 718, it refers to coming from the GT race shop there at Porsche with the track ready chassis and all that. Not necessarily the case here. It's certainly tuned by the same people, but it's not as unique as things are over on the car side. Still easily the highest performance Cayenne ever. Started with the Cayenne Turbo, cranked the 4-liter twin turbo V8 up to 631 horsepower, 3 seconds, 0 to 60, lowered it by 1 inch. Every chassis system gets retuned, including the 4-wheel steering, which it also has. And the suspension gets a huge overhaul. They have so much camber dialed into the front tires. You can see it looking at the vehicle. It looks like some crazy tuner car, the way the front tires are tilted in. And it just looks so awesome. And it drives like no other SUV. It's so different from any other Cayenne. I almost wish they would have put a different body on it and called it something entirely different. But driving,
I have to agree with you there, because you're talking about $180,000, almost, not quite, but almost 3 times the base Cayenne, and you're thinking it looks different, but it doesn't look that different. But I guess the proof is in the pudding. It drives like no other Cayenne, right?
Yeah, when you start driving it, we were in the canyons out in Southern California, and it takes a while for your mind to really wrap around pushing an SUV this hard. It really is a physics manipulating insane machine. The turn in is just immediate. There's no roll, there's no understeer. It just grips and goes through corners like you just can't believe. And you guys have been out there. If you get deep enough in the canyons, there's often other cars out there, high performance stuff, having fun. Nothing can hang with this Cayenne. Sport bike guys, exotics, nothing. This thing is insane.
This particular vehicle brings up to kind of what's going on in the industry. And Jessica, please jump in at any time. I didn't mean to not go to you next, but we're hearing about all these insanely low 0 to 60 numbers from some of the new electric vehicles. And yet it's getting to, you really have to understand that there's more to performance and more to owning a performance car than just speed alone. It's the whole package. Any comment on the package, Jessica?
I mean, I can't wait for us to get it in so I can take a test drive in it. But I think
really cool wheels, I will say.
I think somebody mentioned that Porsche was very clear that it is the fastest Cayenne. It's not the most powerful Cayenne, which I believe that goes to the e-hybrid, if I'm not mistaken.
Correct.
Brian.
Yeah, e-hybrid's like 670.
Right. So it's not the most powerful, but with the e-hybrid, of course, you have the battery pack. It's heavier. So they're just tuning that engine. And I don't know. Like I said, I'm just really excited to drive it, just to see what it's all about.
Any final comment, Brian?
The only downside is you mentioned the $190,000 price tag, but they're not limited in any way. They'll make as many as people want.
I'll take 2. Yeah, on my salary. I don't think so. Let's actually come back down to earth. Not all the way back. We're still talking about something more expensive than most people will generally buy in their lifetime for their garage, but we're getting there. The Cadillac CT5, midsize luxury sedan. I frankly was quite enamored with it, both its very polished looks inside and out. But Brian, I think you again have probably had more experience with not only the CT5 but its predecessors. So why don't you chime in here? What do you think about Cadillac's latest midsize attempt luxury sports sedan?
Yeah, I'm maybe not as enamored with it as you were. As you mentioned, the CT5 did replace the CTS, and I think it's almost a step backward. The 2-liter turbo, which we had in our car, puts out less power. And I don't know, it just seems like it's stuck in the middle. If you're an old school Cadillac buyer, there's not enough luxury comfort there for you. If you're the younger buyer that they're really going after, it doesn't have the feel of the European cars. It is super tech heavy. All the tech works good. It's got the Super Cruise, and if you're into the non-driving driving, and it actually handles pretty decent. They got rid of the Q touch panel nonsense.
Horrible.
Yeah, but it's a lot of car for the money compared to the segment. But I think that's really the best thing it has going for it.
I agree with you that it's a lot of compromise, but if I had to live with it every day, and I've been a fan of what Cadillac's been doing, I felt like it was a more livable package, and it is a bargain. But I will say, in agreement with you, I'm not sure that's exactly what they were after here.
Yeah, I'm not really sure what they're doing as a brand, because they don't seem to be pushing SUVs like everyone else. They still have some sedans, but I'm not sure what they're doing.
I know what they're doing. They're putting all their attention on the Lyriq and the upcoming electric vehicles, which is unfortunate, I think.
Probably ultimately a good call, though.
Yeah. Any comments, Jessica?
I mean, I think, I think I agree with Brian. Like, it's hard to pinpoint where exactly the brand is going, but I hope it sticks around. I think just because Cadillac recently, specifically a lot with their sedans, there's just no, people just don't know what they're selling anymore. Like, people could not name a Cadillac sedan like they could 20, 25 years ago.
Yeah.
They don't know. You do see their SUVs on the road. Those seem to be pretty popular. But like I said, I mean, it's really once in a blue moon that I see a modern Cadillac sedan on the road. So there's just, people just don't really know. And I hope that maybe this sticks a little bit, what they're doing right now. I think it's certainly got a cool look to it. And if you've seen the Escalade, which seems to be everywhere now, the new ones, it's almost, that front end is like exactly the same as the CT5 and the CT4. So maybe that'll have a little bit more brand recognition. for the sedans.
I am happy that they have maintained at least, some sedans in their lineup, and they haven't ditched them all like certainly seems to be the trend. But I have to wonder that if the CT5 and the 4 are not successes, if these will also see an end to Cadillac 4-doors, and they'll go the SUV route like everybody else, which I think is unfortunate and kind of doesn't prepare you for what happens if the market switches. But they are unquestionably, they're going to be, Cadillac is going to be General Motors' lead division on electrics. And I've gotten more questions about the upcoming Lyriq SUV EV than I think of any Cadillac they've done in the last 20 years. Most people that are looking at an all-electric vehicle think that appearance-wise, it's going to be one of the most dynamic ones out there. So we'll see. They certainly seem to be putting their emphasis in that direction.
Definitely.
Over to our lightning round. Speaking of EVs, Elon Musk has been in the headline. It seems like he's in the headline every week. But he did recently confirm that Tesla will be opening their supercharger network to other EV brands later this year. What does that mean for non-Tesla owners who are looking to go all electric? When they do it, they're going to have to make some accommodation for the fact that the Teslas use a different plug than other electric vehicles. But what do you two think this is good? Do you think it's going to have a big impact on the charging infrastructure, or just more money for Tesla when they could certainly need it?
I mean, I think it's definitely a good thing. I don't think it's necessarily such a good thing for Tesla owners, but I think it's a good thing for EV owners in general. Mostly because automakers now, I mean, the supercharger network has to be arguably the most valuable part of Tesla. I mean, that's huge.
They've got 25,000 chargers worldwide, and about half of them in North America. That's a big number.
It's huge. I mean, and, we've talked multiple times before about how, hit or miss a lot of the charging stations can be that, Electrify America or the ones in Walmart parking lots. So that's knowing that there's that huge infrastructure available to all EVs in the future. I mean, that's huge for anybody who, maybe is considering something other than a Tesla. Maybe they were considering a Tesla because of that network, because of the security of that network, knowing that they'll be able to, depending upon where they live, there's all these superchargers everywhere, and they'll be comfortable charging up and never having to worry, never really having that range anxiety. And now being open to other EVs as, more automakers, are releasing new EVs with longer ranges and more technology for consumers. I think it's a good thing overall.
Yeah, there'll certainly be more options for charging, but other than that, I mean, to me, it's not really that big a deal. We'll see how it goes. The first time somebody rolls into the parking lot in their Model S and there's 2 Prius plugins hogging up the Tesla superchargers, we'll see how that goes.
I don't think it'll go well.
Yeah, that's why I mentioned not so good for Tesla owners who love that exclusivity. Being exclusive to them, but some Prius owners might be very happy.
Tesla just released their results for the last quarter, and they had record sales, and they made, I think, more money than they've ever made before. But it's interesting that they're making their money on credits that they get for not using petroleum to power their cars that they can sell to other automakers who need those credits. They're not actually making money on the physical car themselves. They're still losing. And this, to me, is another way of them kind of adding to their profits and making their case that their cars are a valuable commodity So it's, in a way, it's like everybody else is going to be subsidizing Tesla's automobiles by using the Tesla supercharged network. But I think it is going to mean a lot more confidence for people who want to take long trips. So
who knows? I mean, maybe this could spawn something similar, where, you know, more competition, depending upon how this goes. If it goes well, or if, you know, prices are skyrocket, and because you're gonna have to pay for it. It's not gonna be free, like it is for most of those who own Teslas. So yeah, we'll see how it works out.
Okay, we have a viewer question I mentioned at the top of the show from Dion B. What do you do with your long-term vehicles after you are done with them? Well, pretty much they go back to their makers. I don't know if anybody else has got another comment, but when we finish with a long-term vehicle, we have, generally speaking, between, depending on how long it's been with us, whether it's 3 months or a year. During COVID, we actually were keeping vehicles much longer than that, but they may have upwards of 25 to 30,000 miles on them, or as little as 15 or so. And they're test cars, and they are returned to the manufacturers, and there they go to auction. And our understanding is that most road test vehicles, whether they be long terms or short terms, are sold as quote unquote executive vehicles. So company-owned vehicles that have a lot of miles. And I can guarantee, though, that when a long-term vehicle goes back, it's been well maintained, and that speaks to us and other automotive media that have them. Any comments from anyone else?
There have been a few that have been purchased.
Few.
Some manufacturers have let us buy them over the years, but not many. That's not really typical. But yeah, other than that, they come pick it up, and who knows what happens from there.
It's always kind of a sad day when you see the folks come to pick it up, or they send a tractor trailer to pick it up, and it goes off. It's like goes over off into the sunset, and you never hear from them again or see or anything. You know, maybe one day we should get the VIN numbers for some of these long terms and see where they ended up. Might be an interesting exercise.
Yeah, maybe.
The whole business of long terms has changed over the years. Back when let's say we go back 20 years ago, we often had as many as 10 or 12 long-term vehicles in our fleet that we got in to see whether our initial impressions in road tests would hold up over a longer period of time. Many manufacturers have stopped doing long terms. As a matter of fact, I think most have. And now it's, it maybe 3, 4, 5, even 6 at tops. And most of the time, I think it's only about 3 or 4. So it is kind of a dying test mode, but it is a way of finding out after you've spent, 3 months, 4 months, a year, whether or not what you thought during that initial week or 2 weeks of the vehicle is really true, and it gives us a way of letting the potential buyers know what to expect long term. But unfortunately, it's an expensive process for the manufacturers, so that's why it's going away. But thanks, Dion B, and we hope that answered your question. Any rant and raves from anyone this week? Silence.
Oh, I have a rave.
All right.
And I want to just say how I think adaptive cruise control is amazing. I think it's the coolest feature in new cars. I don't know why. Well, I do know why, because I use it on all sorts of different roads. I like to use it. I have like a normal route that I take to go visit my parents, and they live in like a touristy area. So I know how to drive the roads, and I'm usually driving with a bunch of tourists. So there's like the small towns. The small towns that I know, like the speed limit's 25 miles per hour. I just pop on adaptive cruise control when I'm going through, and people behind me, of course, get so upset because they want to go faster, but we're in the small town, and I know that there's police coming up. So
right.
So I use it on all sorts of roads, and I like testing them out on different cars too, to see, like how well they do on the highway with maybe a little bit more traffic. And yeah, no, so I'm raving about adaptive cruise control.
Brian, do you like it or not?
Yeah, as a general rule, I would say yes. If it works properly, I limit the use of them to highways. I don't use them much in the back roads in those scenarios, but on the highway, they can be nice, provided depending on how the distance is set. And I like the ones that give you a warning, like when they start slowing you down. Like some don't, and then people will cut in front of you, and you may not realize you're going 10 miles an hour slower than what you want to be going. But yeah, all in all, I mean, I'll take them or leave them. Just regular cruise control was great.
I'm less than enamored with the systems that combine the automatic and active cruise control with lane keep assist and things like that, because you're expecting the vehicle to maintain speed and to slow down if there's traffic ahead of you or you're too close. But when it starts tugging at the wheel, it can be a little alarming, especially when the roads are not well maintained and the lane markings they're looking for come and go.
Oh yeah.
So I think the basic premise is fine. I
can absolutely agree with that, because most of them do that now.
Yeah.
And also, if you feel like that the car and how you stay in the lane are like two different things, I don't know if that's bad. Sometimes I feel like it's tugging too much. Like I'm in like the far right lane, and it wants me, I want to stay closer to the right side rather than to the left side. So I totally agree with you there, John.
And let's leave it there. I want to thank our two-wheeling reporter, Brian Robinson, and our online content coordinator, Jessica Ray, who also is our podcast producer today. And also thank audio engineer Jim Bigwood for making us sound as great as we possibly can be. Our podcast producer out on maternity leave, Greg Carlos, and podcast creator, Bob Mixter. And everybody out there, if you'd like to know more about MotorWeek, if you're just catching our podcast, go to our website, motorweek.org, and at the upper corner, you can pull down about the show and put in your zip code and find out what public television station is showing us and the time and day. Don't forget also to check us out over on our cable partner at Motor Trend, and frankly, our YouTube channel, youtube.com/MotorWeek, where millions of you see all of the latest segments that we have produced each and every week. And to everyone out there, thanks once again for being a part of MotorWeek.
You've been listening to the podcast of MotorWeek, television's original automotive magazine. MotorWeek is made possible by TireRack.com and RockAuto.com. For additional information on podcasts, videos, and showtimes, visit our website at MotorWeek.org. And watch MotorWeek, television's longest-running automotive magazine series, each week on your local PBS station.